All right. Good morning. Javier, AG. Um, yeah, so options expiration today. And give me a sec here. I'm kind of thinking it's going to be a choppy day. Yesterday was, prices came down to the pivot and they held there. I thought they were going to go a bit lower. I was hoping maybe getting a move down to the 20 MA. Buyers stepped up, held it there, and we'll see how today unfolds. A little gap up going here. So, that almost did it fill the gap? It looks like it just missed filling the gap there. And now, it's right up near this high, and get room to get a little bit higher. As I've been here for a while, we look at these wide range red bars as the halfway point of being resistance. So I think somewhere in between here is where it's going to get stuck today. It's pretty wide range, but I don't think that's going to go too far. Actually, the spiders I thought were going to tag the 20 MA because it got so close. But that as well held that pivot that we spoke about yesterday morning. So they were a little more aggressive, a lot, when it's more bearish, buyers still will step up at that pivot low, but they want it to touch it. And many times it'll break down below it, just slightly break below it and come back up again. And so they stepped up in front of that. So positive. They couldn't get it very far. This restream thing is making my monitors crazy. So now I got the highest here. So this is a bad pattern. It's a bad pattern for putting on a trade here initially. And so it's not down at support. It rallied up close to the gap fill. It's close enough for sellers to show up. Would have been preferable for it to come down here. Now that we have this pivot, preferable for it to come down here and retest that pivot for a possible day trading long setup today. Whereas you can see where it is in the middle of nowhere here. So it still may come down there. It's in the middle of this 60-minute bar. So by the time the open, maybe it does drop down here where it retests this level where I've had my alert and it goes off and we get some kind of a reversal pattern down there, retest and reversal. And we get a day trading long. And that would be a good scenario for zero DTE credit spreads. Spiders usually don't have the premium. SPX does. And so we'd want to get as far down here as we can, where there's enough premium that it makes sense. So we definitely want to be below this level and the 20 MA. There's a void down here. So what's going to be the motivation for sellers to get so aggressive? Well, if it breaks below here and it doesn't pop back up, because we know buyers are going to be down here, and they were here, on the retest. So now this one doesn't matter anymore. It's the same level, but it's not like, okay, two pivots are stronger. No, it's just one pivot. Momentum moved down. So buyers want to step up, shallow retracement, and we get some kind of a bounce. Now, individual stocks that showed relative strength, that'd be good. Stocks that closed above their opening price. I'm just looking at some of my thumbnails. Like telephone has been strong. It's got a bit of a rounding top and a little failure pattern now, but it's pulled back to the 20 and it closed above its open. So stocks that showed some relative strength. There was some news on Tiva. I mentioned that one yesterday in the room, but most of the things closed bearishly. So we'll look for some stabilization down here, and then we'll see where that goes into next week because, weekly chart, assuming that closes with a red candle, it doesn't, rally too much, break of that low. it should send it all the way down here. Now, of course, I do realize there's this pivot there, but in the overall pattern of this failure, the big weekly bar failure pattern, and now this is, remember a few weeks ago, maybe you remember a few weeks ago, I talked about the possibility of a buy setup failure and a measured move lower down here. And so that didn't set up because it never failed. So now it went a bit higher, and we've got this reversal bar, pretty potent. We'll see where it closes. The more it closes now near the low, the greater, or the more it suggests it's going to, break lower. And with this overall pattern as it is, while this might be a stopping point, I'm inclined to think it goes down here and would set up. I think it would set up a good buying opportunity if it went down there relatively fast. So we'll see. And we'll see how the internals all set up, if that all plays out. This was a big positive that the breadth got as high as it did, and so we'll see when these line up down here. And this is either it's on support here or down there. We'll have a short-term opportunity to be more aggressive on the long side. Right now, we're and in the middle of no man's land because it's sitting on some support and it's options expiration. And need zero DTE credit spreads. If there's premium, that's always a good possibility if we can find some premium. And you can see the stabilization here. Once it pulled back to support, it's just normal activity and chopping around here, pivot highs, pivot lows, indecision. It's going to wait for it to break one way or another. Again, this is 24 hours where, looking at the day chart, looking at spiders, if it does come down here and we get a successful retest and reversal, short-term bounce from that point versus, this choppy consolidation, which obviously could break to the downside. How far down is it going to go? Well, down here initially, but that could set up the same kind of retest and reversal and I like that idea as a trade because it breaks this support and comes down to the next one. And then we see if we get a bottoming tail bar or a nice green candle up, but that would be a decent retest kind of a pattern. And look, if options expiration, I don't think it's got much potential to go a lot lower. That's a thought. It's not a fact, but moving down as much as it did in a short period of time, there's the stabilization there. A Friday on options expiration, unless some news was to come out that, could really rattle buyers. You got 3,900 on the S&Ps. That's a whole number, poking down here a little bit, but I just don't see it coming all the way down here today. But as always, we'll see how it unfolds. There is a void there. And so SPX, the downside, I think, is the no-brainer today. And one thing that TC2000 does is it mixes up the monthly with the weekly. They're zeroing it out. Wait a second here. I want to be below 38.50. So that would be a big move. I know that's in the middle of nowhere in a void there, but I just don't think it's going to get down there because of how far it's fallen. And up above, okay. $39.60 from here. That's decent. Yeah, Jake. Yeah, I agree. $39.60. I don't think it'll get up there. It's got to get, below above the 50 level, and there's this premium there, and that's a good distance away. Yeah. The cursor, as you could see, it would have to get all the way up there. And well, see, this is subjective, right? There's a pivot there. I don't know how many of you were at the presentation yesterday with the pivots, but it's on the other side. But what is there directly to the left of this price is this area, which is the true focus of, whether the price resistance is. And so that's at 39.50, so which makes 39.60 a decent number. Okay. All right. What time is it? Q's up here a bit. Interesting. Interest rates are up a bit, and this is going up. It's probably just a reaction to the markets being up here a little bit today. Joe says he's learning something every day. Well, you know what, Joe and everybody, when you all know this, when you know much, right, no matter what the profession is, the leaps and bounds are gigantic, right, at the beginning of what you learn. And then it's of course it slows down over time. But look, well, there's a lot of little nuances Dan and I can share. The stuff that I shared yesterday in that presentation is kind of like, here's like basic, but the big picture kind of stuff, or the foundational stuff that really you need to get your head around, because the more esoteric stuff will help you. It's really not esoteric. It's more detailed, little nuances and stuff that you pick up over time. But the big stuff that I covered yesterday take you a long way. So same price action here. Maybe we get a little move to the downside and retest, and some chopping around today. The YM, we talked about the M top, and look at the size of that weekly red bar. Right? I mean, this is, and with that retesting a topping tail, for it to survive this without breaking these lows, I mean, that's like, okay, this thing's on death row, ready for the electric chair, and you're waiting for the governor's call that, you got a reprieve. This, how many of these I've seen over the years, and how many didn't follow through lower? I can't even remember. That's how potent this pattern is, with that rejection, topping tail bar, and the size of that red bar. So it stopped on support, of course, whole cluster there. I think that breaks, and that's in alignment with, next week. I think the market goes lower. We'll see whatever news drives it. The Russell held up pretty well. I mean, regardless of all of this, just looking at that, what I really like to see here for the Russell, the kind of pattern historically that works out well is, you get a buy setup failure, right, and a measured move down to here, closer to support, which will set up a decent long pattern. If it comes all the way down here, right, it's not what it's supposed to do. So all bets are off. And you got a cluster of moving averages there. So that's a good thing for those that are, everybody that's looking at 20 and 50 on a daily, but I think it'll cut through there, and interest rates, bouncing up. We looked at this yesterday. I mentioned that red bar on the 200, and this breaking the low and trying to make the turn up. So it's starting to make a turn. There's the 10-year, that W pattern that we said might set up. We've been talking about that for a couple of weeks. It looks like that's taken hold. VIX, we don't look at that often, but came down to this level that it's been bouncing from. And we talked about this at the end of last year. And then the markets popped up from that congestion area. Bitcoin still hanging up there pretty darn good. But I think that gap, I think, is calling the markets, move lower. I mean, that seems like an obvious place in 20,000. It would be a pretty normal pullback after that move. And transports, same thing. We're looking for more of a correction going into next week. And as we get closer to a Fed announcement, and, you mentioned yesterday, there was all this soft landing stuff. And now yesterday was like, fear of recession. That's why the market went down. And they have to talk about something, but all of this new stuff, you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and stick to our technicals. And the internal said, hey, there's risk for longs, and we thought maybe it could get up here, but it didn't. So I think today, as I said, could be a choppy day, and we'll see how it unfolds. All yours, Dan. Yeah, that looks like it could go higher, Jake. It's at this high. Well, that's not a pivot. You see that bar sticking up there like that from last June?
All right, good morning. Yesterday, yeah, I said I had a neutral bias here today when we were talking about it in the green room yesterday. Got a mess. And I maintain that bias. We're opening pretty flat here. So everything Greg said in terms of swing trading bias. We did only one earnings options trade. Sold the 255s. So let's move stop to yesterday's low and let it, you can bid a penny if you want, but it's so far away. I'm just going to let it expire at full profit. Google was one of my favorite directional setups yesterday. We're going to buy it today over yesterday's high. Gap messing us up. So if you entered earlier, you're getting paid for it, but we did a put spread. So that looks good. I moved stop under this 15-minute pivot. I'll see and I said bid 15 cents for half, totally just guessing. It's probably going to be more than that because we still have 7 days of expiration. We are very light in inventory. So in the advisory letter, we have that Netflix trade, NFE, we're still short in trail mode. That was a beautiful sell setup. When we do the MT lives on the turn, TURN, that's a beautiful example because you had the upside shakeout, 180 reversal. That's where we entered. And it's been very easy to manage. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I mean, it was one of my, it was the favorite FANG setup yesterday on the long side. I mentioned that Meta is holding strong too, totally different pattern. This is a little bull flag in an uptrend. But, we talk about that a lot, totally different patterns, but which one should I buy? And Google was a better pattern for a 1 to 3 day swing into this void. They're totally different patterns though. Intel, we're short $26 puts, and Fold, a little biotech stock we bought, breakout daily, weekly, monthly. We only have 2 trades in the weekly options trade, or that Google I mentioned, and a DPZ, a little breakdown failure. We sold way at a 335 put spread. Let's check earnings here. PPG gapping up from a big double bottom. Nothing on the daily, but option traders help me out. This would be a beautiful 0 DTE trade under yesterday's low, 5-minute high. With volatility spiking, this CIV-B, I was selling puts way down here. It's gapping up, big multi-month bottoming pattern. And this was your turn, how we are always looking for our something, and that was it right there. Low volume, I don't see any prints. I have no interest in you. Ozark, I don't see any prints. Downtrend, I don't see any prints. This one's gapping up a little bit, 58, but no pattern on slob, no interest. They should be bankrupt, really. Well, I remember Alex telling me that they also kind of had some exposure in the Bitcoin space. Gap in 83, STT, it's just a range bound, nothing to do. RF, gapping, range bound, just no patterns. I think it's going to be hard to find compelling patterns today. This gapping up flat, range bound again. Eric, I said, looks horrible. And now on earnings, it looks more horrible. Got a Bear Island reversal. You got sell setups weekly, monthly. Ally Bank 29. That's a bullish gap. That's a gap breakout from a wide trading range, but the gap's too big. Pan W. Yeah, it's a bottoming pattern. It's a beautiful put spread setup, but the last couple of times I looked, there was not much juice there, but it's a beautiful bottom after a climactic buy setup. I did post one trade from yesterday. This one, CTLT, as a new trade today over yesterday's high. Another bottoming pattern, broke out, little engulfing range expansion. So that's my something bar on trading bottoming patterns. Yesterday's high, stop yesterday's low. And Disney and Thomas, it's not a long pattern that I recognize or like. I mean, it's extended, and there's no price for it with these overlapping bars there. Let's see what else I have here in the carryover list. Orly gapping up a little bit. As long as it doesn't get over 802, then this is still a short watch. I have Netflix and Google on the other computer, so let me put Orly here. That's a very nice short idea. GFL, want to be on the green room, mentioned it as a little retest here in an uptrend. ADV, another bottoming pattern, engulfing range extension. I just like the CTLT better. I think it has a bigger void because target this 260, 270 is all. This thing, so someone in the green room was trading this yesterday. Now it's gapping up. Now it's gapping over 100%. Wow, this thing, what on earth is going on with this? Look at this tail. And obviously it had to do a reverse split because GNS is not a $36,000 stock. So even though it's popping the way it is right now, on a pre-split basis, that's just a little blurb. And JWN, I think lowered guidance, you know, getting smacked right back down to the bottom. We'll see what it does over there. Swim, I forget what their news was. Banner, I think I don't know, we'll come back to it, but that's a bearish daily weekly. INDB, late volume, you can see it's spotty here, but that looks lower too. OCFC, no pattern, but that looks lower. Whiskey, laying off 1,000 workers, and this is on my core long list. You know, it's not, well, maybe not a core, but it's a nice bottoming pattern. And, you know, if it gets going, it can go to $60 and that's at 42. So that would be a good gain. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. See, I don't like the way it came down hard with this engulfing bar, but we'll see. Ford short. Maybe day trade. Maybe day trade. You know, still has a void. Went sideways in the middle of nowhere and had a bearish gap yesterday. TMUS. I think I read that they had a security breach. Somebody mentioned UNG yesterday. That's just a nasty turning downtrend. But, you know, down 24 to 10 in a month and a half. I'll keep an eye on it, see if it wants to turn. Pin's got a downgrade, but this is bullish price action after 100% retracement. I'm going to set an alarm at 2680. If it's able to recover, then it could be a directional and or put spread. What, this breakout failure? No. I don't have time to get into it now. Remind me in a half hour. This is not a breakout failure pattern. You don't get a breakout failure when something runs from the bottom of the range to the top. You expect a pullback, and this is actually bullish price action. Now, this was on our list from yesterday. RLX consolidation and an uptrend with the 20 MA flattening out. Actually, I'll put that in Google's place. ENTB. This was one that a couple of us in the room bought speculative out of the money calls based on some huge option activity. And I saw my alarm go off. I actually, for those of you who did it with me, I did the 12 and a halves for expire tomorrow that I had an order out. I made 100% on 100% return on those. And then I also bought some 15s for next month, but I like that close. So Don, here's another one. This is not a breakout failure, JKS. This is bullish price action after 100%, the greater than 100% move. That's what this is. What? And I've seen a couple things like this last week that just slice through resistance. That is unusually strong. Let's see where Google is. Google is now 28 cents. So I'm gonna cover half at 28 just for